Greetings. My name is Arthur Statt, and I am a graduate of Washburn High School in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The year involved was 1929, just 63 short years ago. Our class that graduated in June of that year held a distinction that no other graduating class at Washburn will ever be able to lay claim to. And that is the fact that we were the very first class to ever graduate from Washburn after having completed a full 4-year curriculum. The school opened in 1925, and we all entered that year as freshmen in the 9th grade. During the following years, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a lot of home movies of many of the events that were taking place on the campus of Washburn. In just a moment, we'll be showing you some of those pictures. But first, I thought it might be interesting for you to inspect the equipment that was used 65 years ago and comparing that with today's modern video equipment. First of all, we had our camera. This is a Pathex camera put out by the Pathé organization of French origin. As you can see, we had a wind-up crank here, which would allow the motor-driven part of the camera to run for 3 minutes, then stop, then wind, then shoot over again. We had a viewfinder here. Our lens had 4 settings for varying degrees of brightness, and this was the magazine that held the film. As mentioned earlier, 8mm film. As far as the film itself is concerned, this is what it looked like. 8mm. Actually, about the width of my little fingernail. Each reel contained 30 feet of film, and when it was developed, would last on the screen for roughly 2 minutes. It took 19 of these to record what you're going to be seeing in just a minute or two. After we took the pictures, these reels had to be sent back to New Jersey for developing. We were very fortunate if we got them back in 3 weeks. Lots of times it took 5-6 weeks before we would get them back, before we would see what we had taken. Contrast that with today's video equipment, where you see simultaneously as you're taking. Then finally, we have the projector. This little baby here is 65 years old, and it still works today. Actually, right now, in May of 1992, we are using this projector to project these films onto a specially contrived box that will in turn put them onto videotape, so that you will be able to see videotape on your VCR. Before we start the pictures, I believe I should tell you what my personal credits were while I was at Washburn. I was associate editor of the Wahyan yearbook for the year of 1929. I don't know how many of you know it. The word Wahyan, W-A-H-I-A-N, stands for Washburn High Annual. Even in those days, we came up with some good ones. I also was captain of the golf team during the years 1927 and 28. Also member of the National Honor Society, president of the 1 to 9 High Y Club, and member of the Boys W Club. I can honestly say that the 4 years I spent at Washburn were real happy years. Years that give me vivid memories that are now 65 years old, but they, in a way, it seems just like it was yesterday. So if you will pardon my sentimentality, about this thing, I'm now going to try and show you pictures that were taken. You will see scenes of the football team, the Gala day, when everybody took the day off and had fun, scenes of the various faculty members, our principal, and also individual pictures of the class of January 1928 and June of 1928. So without any further delay, let's have a 65-year-old look back at the past. Thank you very much. This first player is named Irving Dufour. This is Bob Bruntlett. This is Corky Wright. I'm not able to identify this player, or this one, or this one. That is Otis Dipwick, who went on to become a star reporter for the Minneapolis Tribune. I'm not able to identify this gentleman. The man on the left is Howie Gibbs, probably one of the most outstanding athletes that we had at the time. I cannot identify this player or this one. This is Bob Reinhart, played tackle. His father owned the Reinhart department store downtown on 9th Street. This is Richard Carlson, our class president, who became a movie star. I'm not able to identify this player. Okay. This is some scrimmage scenes in the middle of winter. In a moment you will see, oh, on the left is C.C. Mitty, and I'm not able to identify those. But in a moment you will see a man crossing in the background. He is none other than our school principal, Mr. A.E. McQuarrie. This player was Robert Ogden. This was Dick Forrest. Dick Forrest was 6'2", 210 pounds, not an ounce of fat on him. An outstanding athlete. This was Bill Ziske, who was an outstanding football player and also played with me on the golf team. I'm not able to identify this one or this one. This is Oscar Matheson. This I'm not able to identify. I might stop right here and mention the fact that in the year 1926, Washburn did not enter a team in the City League competition. The year of 1926 was spent in appraising the players, trying out for various positions, strong coaching, strong practices. Then they entered the City League in September of 1927. After clawing and fighting and scratching their way through an entire season, they ended up in the cellar position. This is not to their discredit. These were young men who were respected by their teammates and by their classmates. I will now continue with the pictures shown. Not able to identify this one. This is Bob Ryder. I believe he was either a tackle or a guard. This is Paul Warfield, our quarterback. Here we have more of the scrimmaging in about a foot of snow. Just a moment there. The man in the background walking left to right was our school principal, A.E. Mcquarrie. I might pause at this point to recite for you the names of the first team that played in the year 1927. The captain was Hovey Blackmar. After he graduated, Hovey opened up a Standard Oil station on the corner of 50th Street and Bryant, on the northwest corner. Needless to say, most of his customers to start with were Washburnites. These also made up the starting 11. Tom Norton, Will Fawcett, whose father and uncle were owners of the famous Fawcett Publications in Minneapolis. Paul Walfred, Bill Ziske, Dick Forrest, Jack Rivness, Bob Bruntlett, Ken Lozay, Al Lewis, Irving DeFore, and Howard Gibbs made up the first team. Howard Gibbs was elected captain for the year 1928. Hovey Blackmar was the captain of the very first team that Washburn put on the field. Now we continue. There's Mr. Mcquarrie. These are mostly the coaching staff and managers. That shot in the background is the greenhouse. This was taken on the south lawn. This next sequence covers Gala Day, May 20th, 1927. About all I will be able to do during this sequence is to identify some of the people that will be appearing by name. There are so many, 65 years later, I'm not able to recognize all of them. But I can probably pick out a dozen or so. As you see, we had a little title machine. This showed the first authentic pictures of Washburn Gala Day, May 20th, 1927. This is the parade as it was progressing westward along 49th Street. As I mentioned earlier, Washburn Gala Day was an annual event, no school, so obviously we were able to secure the cooperation of every student. Here's a group of girls. I can't tell you who they are, probably the Girls Association or the girls' gym class. Here comes the Denim Brigade. Now it says the band makes a remarkable showing. You'll have to take my word for that, because we did not have audio in those days at all. But they did do a good job. Hats off to you, Washburn High. And here's the band. This scene was filmed on the vast expanse of lawn immediately east of the building. The pictures were taken from the high embankment east of the high school. Additional parade views. This is the band coming towards us. Boy Scouts. Here they were done up in attire of the Revolutionary period. The Denim Brigade again. Races were held. Kind of a miniature track meet took place that day. This was on the parade grounds immediately in front of the west entrance to the high school. There's the high embankment that I referred to. Folk dances. Here I'm going to stop frame to try and identify. I'm sorry, but I cannot identify these three men. I thought that the one on the right might have been Mr. Mcquarrie, but he was a much taller, more of a gigantic man than that. Now this is Mr. Larson, our gym teacher. Watch this flip. How's that? In addition to Mr. Larson, here we come with Mr. Mcquarrie. The gentleman on the right is Mr. Archibald E Mcquarrie. About 6'4", a giant of a man. He was the first principal of Washburn High, and I often wondered how many years his term did actually run. And so ends the recording of Washburn Gala Days on May 20th, 1927. This next sequence is our gym class in action. There's a shot of the eastern front of Washburn High School. Also, you can tell the sheer numbers that were involved in this effort. The man on the platform is Wilhelm Larson, our gym teacher. In addition to being our gym teacher, he was an expert on calisthenics of all kinds and was coach of our hockey team, which, you won't believe it, won the city championship, beating every single other school, winning every game. This is more of our gym class, marching in formation. There's a good close-up shot of Mr. Larson. And probably the most enjoyable part of Gala Day was a trip to the theater. Here you see the students sadly leaving the school, heading for the streetcars and the buses to go downtown. Two of our school's most outstanding athletes were Dick Forrest and John Feigery, who you see here. And this is Dick Forrest. These two athletes engaged in football, basketball, hockey, almost anything we had. There's a good close-up shot. You'll notice that Forrest on the left is the much taller of the two. He was an outstanding physical specimen. John Feigery, fully a head shorter, was tough as nails. He was an outstanding member on our championship hockey team. His nickname was Hardy, and I think it pretty well fits his appearance. This is Feigery on the broad jump, and Forrest on the broad jump, and the two of them coming at us. Here we have some scenes of our track team in practice. This was not an official track meet. This next sequence shows individual close-up shots of the senior graduating class of January 1928. Here I will probably only be able to identify maybe 4 or 5 by name. So here goes. Film's not running through at all. Now it is. As you can see, for the benefit of the photographer, these girls, oh, this is Don Anderson. These people held up signs indicating their name. Now that is Hubby Blackmar, the captain of the first football team for Washburn. And that is Dick Cheney. That is Virginia Boley. This is Leona Cooper. I believe she was vice president of the January class. This one, can you see that name? Her name is June Day. What's in a name? This was James Donovan, business manager of the Wahyan yearbook for that particular class. That was Otis Dipwick, who became a reporter for the Tribune in Minneapolis. Sports reporter, I should say. This is Markham Ivy, who was class president. This is Earl Savitt, spelled S-A-V-I-T-T. And that is Betty Rowe. This is Frank Thompson, who was the business manager of our hockey team. And here we have a shot that I'm putting on the pause frame for. On the left is C.C. Minty. Mr. Minty was the assistant principal under Mr. Mcquarrie, and he also served as boys' advisor. The lady on the right was Virginia Lewis. She, in turn, was the advisor for all the girls in our school. These two backups for Mr. Mcquarrie formed the nucleus for the start of Washburn High School. They were all charter, you might say, officials of our high school in 1925 when it first opened. Now we see a group picture of the January 1928 graduating class. This is Robert Streeter. Bob was the center on our football team for 3 years in a row. He was a very close personal friend of mine. And I'm very, very saddened to be able to say to you that this young man was tragically killed in an airplane accident over in Wisconsin just a year or two after he got out of high school. That last one was Bob Hamilton. This one is Lionel Barker. These were all members of the High Y Club, of which I was president. Now this is individual close-ups of the June 1928 graduating class. The man on the left in the white shirt was Carter Mcdonald. Carter went on to become, in later years, a store manager of one of the most exclusive department stores in Los Angeles, named Robinson's. Carter was an excellent dramatist. He appeared in almost every play that Washburn presented. Next to Carter is Bob Ryder, who was mentioned earlier as one of the stalwarts of our football team. And this is Virginia Lewis, which you saw earlier. She was the advisor for all of the girls at Washburn High. And here was our top brass. On the right, Mr. A. E. Mcquarrie, as I've said before more than once, a giant of a man. And on his left, his assistant principal, C.C. Minty, who was also boys' advisor and assisted in coaching in football. One thing I forgot to mention in the football sequence, the name of our coach. Our coach was Jack Wells. Jack had a very famous brother by the name of Marshall Wells, who played tackle for the University of Minnesota, and the best he could ever do was attain the status of All-American. How do you like that? We had his brother for a coach. The two men in the background, on the left is Harold Culp, K-U-L-P. On the right, here he is again with the long nose, Willard Dressler, one of our class clowns. This was a special dress-up day, which is a tradition for all senior classes as they graduated. On the left, we have faculty member Anna Smart. Anna specialized in languages. I took 2 years of German under her and 4 years of Latin. Oh, how I cussed those 4 years. The first 2 weren't so bad, but when you get into Virgil and Cicero, you're getting into something. But she was a good teacher. If she could teach me anything, she had to be a good teacher. This was Jane Offeld. I'm not able to identify this trio. Here we have Vernon Winslow, who took me literally when I said, move around a little bit, I want some action. Here he goes again. This was Gordon Reed, our class treasurer. You notice his pockets are sewed up tight. And here was Martha Jane Quigg and her boyfriend, Dick Forrest, the athlete. The next segment of our presentation on videotape concerns the Wahyan, our annual yearbook. This particular book was unique for 1 or 2 unusual reasons. In the first place, instead of all of the copy being printed, it was done in what we call script. It was written in longhand by Ruth Plank, who was editor-in-chief of the Wahyan. This particular shot here shows the staff of the Hawaiian, the management staff. At the top 2 pictures, the lady on the left, it was our editor-in-chief, and yours truly. Next to her on the right I was associate editor. In the lower right corner, we see Marjorie Gray. Marjorie did all of the artwork in connection with this publication. Ordinary snapshots of these people were presented to her, and she did pencil sketches, which you see now, a finished product in the annual. The man on the left, lower left, was Jim Campbell. Jim was our business manager, and he did one excellent job trying to determine how many to print, what to charge, how to collect. These were Herculean jobs that Jim performed, for which we were all grateful. Here you can get just a small idea of the script work. Just below the Wahian staff, you can see how all of the script was in handwriting. And as I said earlier, this was the handwriting of Ruth Plank, the editor-in-chief. And in the lower right, once again, Marjorie Gray, who did all of the artwork in connection with this publication. Our yearbook logically started off with a picture of our school principal. This is Archibald E Mcquarrie. You saw him in several scenes in the motion pictures earlier, where he was watching the football team and where he was posing with his assistant, Mr. Minty, and the girls' council of our school. It's impossible for me to tell you which angle it was taken from, but as you can see, it's a three-level structure at that point. Here's our south entrance, located off of 50th Street. Over here is a front view taken from the parade grounds, looking toward the west. Here is our school monument. This is the greenhouse that was formed the backdrop for the football scenes that you saw earlier, where they were scrimmaging in the snow. A shot of the trophy case in the main floor corridor, right directly across from the general office. And this is the exterior view, as it says, from 50th Street. And here we have a shot of the eastern face of the high school, taken in the dead of winter. We are now going to show you close-up pictures of the officers of the class of January 1929. We lead off with the class president, Richard Dick Forrest. Dick Forrest was the outstanding athlete of our school, as mentioned in the previous pictures that you saw of him participating in track and so forth. And you can see as the camera pans down, even though it is slightly out of focus, you can still see that he was one busy boy. Dick Forrest, President, January 1929. Shot is that of Gene Parks, Vice President of the January 1929 class. Here you can see her list of credits that she was also very, very active in class activities. The next shot is that of Ina Ramsey, Secretary of the class of January 1929. Would you please note in particular the signature, Ina Ramsey, right under the picture. All of these signatures were those of the actual person involved in the photo. Here again, the list of credits shows that she was also very busy. This is an obvious conclusion because it was the most popular and the most active students that were elected to officership, you might say, of the various classes. Next shot is that of Donald Nichols, treasurer of the class of January 1929. We often used to wisecrack about the fact that the pockets of the pants of the treasurer had to be sewed up. So Don's pants were sewed up for a half a year while he became treasurer of his class. Now we go to the officers of the June class for 1929. Leading off the list was our class president, Richard Carlson. Richard's most notable feat was that after graduation, this young man went to Hollywood. He became a motion picture star. He was the featured male lead in The Creature from the Black Lagoon, if you remember. He also appeared in The Snows of Kilimanjaro with Deborah Carr and Stuart Granger. Richard, in addition to playing on the football team, was into just about every other activity, especially class plays, while he was a student at Washburn High. Next shot is that of Dorothy King, who was the vice president of the June 1929 class. And as we pan down below her picture, we see that she likewise was one busy girl. Now we see Grace Thompson, who was secretary of the June class in 1929. The job of secretary was probably the most difficult job of all of the officers. She was into everything. This would be true of Ina Ramsey in January. There was little glamour to the job of being secretary, just work. And Grace did a beautiful job as secretary. And now, winding up our list of class officers, was Fred Hofbauer. Fred was treasurer of the class of June 1929. In addition to the slates of officers that you just witnessed, there were many in our class who distinguished themselves in other forms of endeavor. We're going to show you just a few of those now. The first is John Feigery. You saw him in a tracksuit in the movies, and his outstanding ability as an athlete. But athletics was not his only strong suit. This young man was in the Honor Society, Student Council, on the library board, the High Y Club, the Glee Club, the W Club, the Grist staff, which was our newspaper, football for 3 years as a sophomore, junior, and senior, hockey for 3 years, the same, captain in his junior and senior year, member of the citywide championship hockey team that won every game in league competition, track in his junior and senior year, a member of Quill Anthology, where he was business manager. He was in the class play and was also the chairman of the social committee. Now, I can't think of anything he didn't do while he was at Washburn High. Here we have a close-up of Marjorie Gray. Marjorie, as I previously mentioned, was the art editor of the 1929 Hawaiian. We see from her credits that she was in the National Honor Society, the Girl Scouts, the Glee Club, the Harlequin Club, appearing in several plays that were produced by the Washburn High Harlequin Club. This shot is of Melvin Sinekin. Melvin was one of my closest personal friends while I attended Washburn. The reason I am showing him to you is because of the very, very unusual business connection that his family had. His father raised and trained shepherd dogs, German shepherds, for both police work and specifically for being leaders of the blind. This was out at Lake Minnetonka. I believe it was near the town of Superior. The caption under Melvin's signature there says, "The essence of power lies in reserve." A very true statement. The next scene is of Howard Tyner. Howie, as he was known as, was one of the outstanding athletes in our school. He was member of the championship hockey team that has been referred to several times earlier, also a member of the W Club, the STO High Y Club, and the baseball and basketball teams. Howard's father was a very respected gentleman and well known to all the students at Washburn High. His father was an Episcopal preacher at St. Luke's Episcopal Church down on 46th Street and Colfax. He was very instrumental in youth movements and had a Sunday night class called YPF, meaning Young People's Fellowship, where all students, regardless of religion, were invited to come and share in discussions and social activities. And winding up our list of famous personalities is myself, the self-appointed cameraman for the class of June 1929. One of the most prideful athletic teams that we enjoyed while we were students at Washburn High was that of our hockey team. The hockey team was city champions for 1928. Here we see the entire team gathered together for one photo. In the bottom row, reading from left to right, is F. Brooke, B. Brooke, Chuck Hibbard, John Feigery, Howard Gibbs, Jack Morris. In the top row, we have our coach, Wilhelm Larson, business manager Lundgren, Stevens, Kessler, Chester Hudson, our goaltender, who was named All-City goalie, Grover Forrester, Jack Dunlop, and Howard Tyner, just referred to earlier. It looks as though the neatest one of the whole bunch was Howard Tyner, because he was sending his hockey suit to the cleaners the day this picture was taken. At the bottom of our annual page showing the hockey team is a list of the scores in the city competition for 1928. I'll read them off with you. Marshall, we won 5-0. We beat Roosevelt 3-2. We beat Central 5-2. We tied with South 2-2. We beat North 5-0. We beat Thomas Edison 6-0. And we lost to West 1-0. Now I am guilty of a serious error there. Those are the scores of the year following the 1928 champions. So now let me give you the scores for the 1928 team, who were the city champions. Washburn defeated the following schools: Central 4-1, Roosevelt 4-0, South 2-1, Washburn 3, Marshall 0. They defeated West 2-1, over Central 2-1, over Roosevelt 4-2, over South 4-2, over Marshall 4-0, and over West, a second game, 3-1. Now, in closing, a final word about Coach Wilhelm Larsen. Without doubt, Mr. Larsen was one of the biggest factors in Washburn's championship hockey team. What the architect is to a beautiful building, or the master mechanic to a perfect machine, just such a factor is the coach in the building of a successful athletic team. I think that was a very fine tribute for our coach. And once again, we were very, very proud of our 1928 championship. Finally, we see the golf team for 1927. Reading from left to right on the bottom row: Jarvis 2, myself, Johnny Mason. Upper row, left to right, Kenneth McLaren, Odegaard, and Coach McCoy. Now, this team also had a claim for fame. In the fall of 1927, we tied with North High of Minneapolis for the city championship. That year we were officially named as co-champions for the city of Minneapolis, making our golf team the first team of all Washburn High athletic teams to ever be declared champions. The very following year, 1928, our hockey team was undisputed champions. Just a little side note here that will lead us into our next sequence. We played all of our matches at Glenwood Golf Course in western Minneapolis. On one Saturday morning in May of 1927, as we came off the 18th green, an employee came running out of the clubhouse to tell us that Charles A. Lindbergh had just landed in Paris. Coincidentally, we have motion pictures of the Lindbergh Flight, his landing, his reception, and his appearance in Minneapolis at Wool Chamberlain Airport. Those are filmed. And now, as I referred to in the commentary about the golf matches, we have some shots of the Lindbergh Flight. Before I show you the pictures, let me just briefly recall, after all, 65 years ago, our memories may not have functioned too well, but the following facts have to do with the flight of Charles A. Lindbergh. In the first place, Charles A. Lindbergh was a Minnesota boy. What many people today do not realize is that he was raised in Little Falls, Minnesota. And what's very, very astounding is that he made his famous flight when he was only 25 years of age. Here are some statistics regarding this flight. It was 4,000 miles long, 98% of which was over water. Not too safe a landing field in case of emergencies. From takeoff to Le Bourget Field in Paris, as I said, 4,000 miles. It took him 33 hours to make the flight, which is an average speed of 121 miles per hour. Today we've got kiddie cars that can go that fast. When he landed at Le Bourget Field in Paris, something that is a little known fact, that while they played about a dozen Klieg searchlights on the field, it was total darkness. Little known is the fact that over 500 Parisian automobiles drove out to the landing strip, parked alongside the runway, and trained their headlights on the landing strip so that our boy could land. Lindbergh went on to be feted and honored in Paris, receiving the Cross of the Legion of Honor from the President of France. After his appearances in Europe, he returned to the United States, flying into New York Harbor, landing at the Battery. You will see scenes of just a portion of the 4 million people. Think of that, folks. 4 million people witnessed Lindbergh's parade through downtown New York. You will see scenes at the Washington Monument and at Central Park, and also going up the canyon of Lower Broadway in a ticker tape parade that has never been equaled since. After he was through receiving all of the honors in New York, which was a welcome by Mayor James J. Walker, a welcome by Governor Alfred E. Smith, and an award to him by the President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, who presented Lindbergh with the Distinguished Flying Cross. After all that, Lindbergh realized his responsibility to make himself available in the leading cities of the United States so that the populace could pay honor and respect to him. One of the first cities that he visited, piloting his own plane, was Minneapolis. I imagine that this was due to the fact that his roots were down in Minnesota. Up to this point in the narration, all the films that you will see were taken by Pathé News. These were professional cameramen. As the entourage left Wold Chamberlain Field, yours truly took over. I was fortunate in being there and able to take home movies of his exit from Wold Chamberlain Airport and his trip through downtown Minneapolis. At this point, I have to apologize to you because when you see the scenes of him leaving the airport, the pictures are terrible. The lighting is bad. The images are blurred. As a matter of fact, it is impossible to pick out which car Lindbergh is riding in. But as he goes through downtown Minneapolis, I was able to get a shot of him sitting up on the back seat, on the back of the back seat, with his feet on the seat itself. This was a common practice in those days for heroes who wanted to be seen by the populace. This is a scene that I'm extremely proud of. I filmed it under a serious handicap. The cops did not want me to go out in the street. With the help of my father, who pushed me out, and you won't believe this, a wave of the hand from Charles Lindbergh himself to the policeman, indicating that it was okay for this young 15-year-old brat to take his picture. These are all true facts, folks. So now, with commentary, we will show you the Pathé News recording of the Lindbergh flight with some commentary from me. Here we go. As it's I don't know whether you can read this clearly or not on your television screen, but it says Captain Charles A. Lindbergh before he started on his famous flight from New York to Paris. "25 years old, shy, modest, an all-American boy. Here is a shot of his plane being refueled. Over 700 gallons of gasoline were pumped into the Spirit of St. Louis that day. This is a shot of Lindy with his mother from Little Falls, Minnesota. Now here we have the actual takeoff of the NX-211. That extra load of gasoline, which was erroneously calculated, almost resulted in complete disaster at this point. When he cleared the trees and the wires at the end of the runway, there wasn't more than 3 or 4 feet distance between them. His first landfall was the western coast of Ireland, where fishermen spotted his plane, from advanced publicity knew immediately who it was, and graciously flashed the word on to Paris. When Lindbergh landed at Le Bourget Field in Paris, as I said before, it was pitch dark. These are just 2 of the Klieg lights that the airport furnished, but were not enough to cover everything that was taking place. This is part of the crowd in Paris waiting for him before the sun went down. He has landed, and the crowds immediately dashed onto the field, causing a lot of souvenir damage to the Spirit of St. Louis. This shows him being welcomed at the home of Ambassador Herrick from the United States. There is a shot of the plane when it was finally put under protective custody at the airport in Paris. Here we see Lindbergh on the left with the President of France, Doumergue, in the center, and Ambassador Herrick on the right. The President of France awarded Lindbergh the Cross of the Legion of Honor for his feat. He also received a cash prize of $25,000. In 1927, to a young 25-year-old farm boy from Minnesota, I think that $25,000 must have looked pretty big. Here's an excellent close-up shot of Charles Lindbergh. And as I stated earlier, this is just not my personal opinion. This was uniformly recognized the world over. A modest, shy, unassuming, all-American boy. This segment has to do with Lindbergh's welcome home, as he was feted in New York City. There we see New York Harbor. There he comes off of his ship. Now this is just part of the crowd that witnessed Lindbergh's reception in the United States. Here, Calvin Coolidge, President of the United States, is presenting Lindbergh with the Distinguished Flying Cross. That was in Washington, of course. This scene in New York Harbor is where he flies in to the battery. This is where the motorcade procession starts. Now we see part of the crowd as the motor cavalcade proceeds up Lower Broadway. They called it the Canyon of Lower Broadway. Here he is being welcomed by the Mayor of New York City, James J. Walker. On the left, right behind the microphones, is Governor Alfred E. Smith. And here is a good study of Lindbergh in his flying machine. And I think you will agree with me in all of these pictures that you've seen, especially the close-ups of Lindbergh, that his reputation of being modest and shy and unassuming was well deserved. Now these are the pictures that I apologized for, where the lighting was so poor, but there was about 7 or 8 touring cars, as we called them, that exited Will Chamberlain that day, bearing Charles A. Lindbergh. This is Minneapolis, Will Chamberlain Airport. Now we're coming to the part where I took the photo in downtown Minneapolis. Get a load of those tires on that touring car, and you can see Lindbergh sitting up on the back of the seat with his feet on the seat rest. We will have another stop action here, just there. We are now going to attempt to bring you individual photographs of each member of the graduating class of June 1929. There may be 1 or 2 that we won't be able to identify, but regretfully, we will face that problem. So now, let us take them one at a time. They will not necessarily appear in alphabetical order either, but I will try my best to identify each one. I believe in total we're talking about 180 graduating seniors. So let's roll. We have Alan Adams, Nathan Adams, Florence Amadon, Robert Blackmar, Paul Bliss, and Mary Bones. Margaret Clore, C-L-O-R-E. Margaret Cole. Estelle Collins. Madeline Dillman. Floyd Downham. And Benjamin Drake. Evelyn Erickson. Barbara Everts. John Feigery. Hazel Garber. Carol Geckler. Beth Gerber. Hudson Hamilton. Sanford Hanscom. Irene Hartz. Eunice Hokinson. Warren Holt. Chester Hudson. Fred Kessler. Dorothy King. Leona Kirk. Robert Lewick. Helen Mcdonald. Margaret McNaughton. Don Miller. Guernsey Mattel. Catherine Mackey. Leona Neva. Harold Naran. Carla Northrop. Fred Poppy. Ruth Rector. Isabel Riley. Ruth Schofield. Marion Siegel. Randolph Severson. And Squire. DeWitt Stafford. Arthur Statt. Grace Thompson. Dorothy Todd. Harold Tollefson. Warfield. Helen Walsh. Warren. Donald Whedon. Robert Wood. No, wait a minute, I got to. Eleanor Stevens. Robert Streeter. Evelyn Sunquist. Hazel Swenson. Margaret Torrance, Howard Tyner, Donald Utton, Jane Vintner, Robert Reinhart, Henry Rame, Mary Jane Ring, Margaret Romhild, Jack Shaw, Bill Simon, Melvin Sinekin, Metta Smith, Charlotte Molstead, John Molyneux, Werner Moore, Robert Naslund, Frank Norton, Jane Nugent, Robert Ogden, Bernice Olson. There, good. Charles Neeland, Jean Krieshbaum, Robert Lampert, Sylvia Larson, Thomas McCourt, Bernice McGowan, Kenneth McLaren, Adele Marks. Hild Haugen, Robert Huxby, Kathleen Hayes, Elsie Hellstrom, Jean Hunter, Bertha Irwin, Aline Jacobs, Bertha Jacobson, Kenneth Elstead, Jane Beasler, Florence Fillingham, Robert Fletcher, Howard Gibbs, May Graham, Charlotte Granger, Marjorie Gray, Jane Collins, Lynette Conklin, Lucille Conley, Jarvis Coulard, Jack Dunham, Thomas Dunlop, Florence Isley, Valentine Eldred, Dorothy Anderson, Eva Anderson, Robert Anderson, Charlotte Angier, Marion Bowens, Lillian Brandt, Howard Brown, Mae Bryce, Virginia Lee Bechtel, Mary Ann Beebe, Margaret Bell, Philip Bizance, Frank Bush, James Campbell, Lowell Carlson,
Crawford, Edith Danielson, Mary Alice Engen, Ingold Hanger, Robert Ankema, Elvira Erickson. Grover Forrester, Ingrid Franzen, Mildred Friedland, Sidney Galchut, Lois Groves, June Goines, Jack Hall, Lorraine Halberg. Catherine Hennig, Ruth Hersheimer, Charlotte Hibbard, Fred Hofbauer, Marjorie Jensen, Walter Thompson, Miriam Cannell, Doris Carlson. Viola Larson, Robert Lefebvre, Betty Leland, John Leonard, Marcus Madison, Robert Madison, Francis Maxon, Jean Marigold, Pearl Nelson, Lanson New, William Newgord, Genevieve Nichols, Donald Peterson, Hazel Pettit, Corrine Ponsard, Dorothy Poppy, James Sargent, Ann Schomer, Sidney Schrader, Dolores Schreiber, Milton Smith, Robert Smith, Dorothy Sonnenfeld, Franklin Sprecher, Rosemary Swenson, John Swift, Sam Keitler, Milton Thompson, Julia Von Custer, Ella Banaka, Helen Walker, Donna Wallace, Cletus Westover, Helen Wright.
So now we have completed our 65-year look back into the past. Hope you have enjoyed it. It has been a privilege and with a deep sense of satisfaction that we have been able to transfer these old films onto videotape for your enjoyment. To those of you who are who would put yourselves in the category of being old-timers, we hope that these pictures have brought back some real fond, loving memories of the past. to those of you who are present-day faculty members at Washburn, may I respectfully admonish you to continue to carry the torch that Mr. Mcquarrie lit in 1925. We hope that your personal satisfaction in doing a good job will be a reward to you and will be a benefit to the students under your control. And finally, to the present-day students of Washburn, I've got some advice for you. Enjoy your sojourn at Washburn High School. Have fun. Live it up. Learn all you can. You must think about this. You are presently forming some friendships that may last you many, many years of your lives. Pick good ones. What's more important, the character traits and the character habits that you are forming today will determine what your future lives will be. Make them good. You deserve it. Thank you, and goodbye from Arizona.